made a lot of mistakes in the beginning because we didn't understand it. But I think today when somebody gets started, it's completely different. Every tool that they need, if they have a question, there's a resource and there's a tool, and I think it's simplified. I think you guys understand it so well. So I'm excited about it now.
In our business, we're simply just planting seeds. Every new connection is an expansion of knowledge. So every new relationship we can build, every new connection we can make, the ultimate goal is to strengthen both parties through that connection, through that relationship.
You know, if we're created in the image of the creator of the heavens and the earth, is it not logical to think that we're meant to be creative in some way in the gifts he's given us for his kingdom?
Welcome to the Cash Flow Legends podcast with your hosts, Nate, Brandon, and Brock. Remember, our insights are not direct financial advice, so consult with your financial team before making any decisions based on the topics discussed in this show.
Right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cash Flow Legends. Nate and I are thrilled to have two of our favorite people here who are guests today, Brian and Sarah Brown. And we are going to spend some time just talking about their infinite banking journey, becoming your own banker, and really how the heck we got connected, because I don't even think we have ever even spent time together in person yet.
Not yet.
Is that correct? Okay. Okay. But we have known each other for how many years?
It's got to be
4.
coming up on 5 or close to it.
Yeah, getting
4
close
or
to 5 years
Okay.
now. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll dive into the questions and really start having some fun with, how you're sitting here on the Cash Flow Legends podcast, what our connection is, what all we do. But first, Brian and Sarah, just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're really excited about that you guys are doing right now, what season of life you're in, anything that is really relevant to who you are. And then we'll start asking you some questions and just dive in.
Sure. Well, thanks for having us. Yeah, that's a little bit of a broad question. I think the thing that we're excited about most right now is just, our kids are 4. We have a 4-year-old daughter, and our son will be turning 7 next week. And so it's really about investing time in them and, building our family and making sure that we're doing things that allow us to not only have financial resources, but the time resources and the flexibility to be here while they're young. And that's probably our biggest focus at the moment, doing things that matter with them.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. I think I remember how we got connected, but I would love to hear it from you guys' point of view and what you remember. And the point I'm wanting to make with this question is this: social media gets a real bad rep a lot of times for a lot of things. But Nate and I would tell you that some of the most genuine, authentic, awesome relationships that we've had since we started this journey have come from social media. And there's a level beyond just connecting, and it's connecting outside of the social media to really get to know each other. So remind me what you guys remember of how we got connected, and then we'll chime in.
Yeah. What I remember is I was on Twitter, and I really don't spend a ton of time on Twitter, but I was on there. Nate got recommended for some stuff, or one of his posts popped up, whatever the case was. I was familiar with infinite banking, so started following Nate, liked the content that he was putting out, his he was gaining a bunch of followers. So it was kind of cool to watch that. And I think you reposted something that he posted and then sent you a message because I wanted to hear a little bit more about what you were doing. And I think that's just how it started. It seems kind of random, but obviously it wasn't.
Yep. I love it. It seems kind of random because we're in the world we're in. A lot of times it's not as random to us as if somebody was listening and going, I don't ever get on social media. That I could see how that'd be random to somebody on the outside looking in.
Yeah. What do you remember though?
Well, I remember getting the message from you. And so typically speaking, Nate was at the forefront of all things Twitter, and he was the more well-known front-facing interaction. And I was more just kind of following along, and he and I were talking about that daily because we were so excited and still are about the message of infinite banking and the impact it had in our life. And so like any sound person would do when somebody direct messages you that you don't know, you go stalk their pages, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, isn't that what we do today? So Brian sends me a message and I go look at anything that he's done that I can find anywhere. And I'm going, I think I'd like this guy. Like before I ever respond back, this is my rhythm now of how I do anything. So I message Nate and I'm like, hey, this guy Brian messaged me. I think he'd be a good, person to connect to from all the stuff I've seen him post. And so I remember connecting from there, telling Nate about it. And then I think we had I don't remember if we met in, on a Zoom or something, or if we just chatted back and forth in DMs. But I remember telling Nate about it. But I do remember somewhere along the way down the road, Brian saying to me and Nate, "Hey, I think Sarah might be interested in connecting with you guys because of y'all's heart to help people and her heart to help people related to our journey with infinite banking," somewhere along the way. Do y'all guys remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's the short version.
Yeah, that's a very short version. That
And
didn't
it's
happen
Yeah.
like the next time we talked, I know.
Yeah, it's
Well,
funny because we were just in a series of events with our life and our business. Silly things like our house flooded that year that we kind of connected, and I remember feeling like, okay, not now, God, not now. And God just kept saying, now it's time to connect with these guys. So God in his infinite wisdom knew better than I did.
Man, doesn't he?
well, and that reminds me because we were in a season in our business where we were experiencing some growth and we really needed some help. But we weren't at the level of maturity that we're at today where we could go who, not how. And so we were kind of beating our head against the wall a little bit, trying to figure out like, how were we going to make this work? How were we going to properly vet someone that was a really excellent fit for what we needed? It was really sort of a moment of clarity for us that we just sort of took a step back and we're like, man, God's got us this far. Like, why don't we just trust him that the right people are going to show up at the right time? And lo and behold, we get connected to Sarah. I remember that first meeting that we had where me and Brandon were renting out an Airbnb that day because we were doing some recording for the business. We were doing some videos and things like that and just game planning and all that stuff. So we had this Airbnb rented out, and I remember doing that call with you. It was just very obvious, very quickly that we were all connecting at the right time.
Absolutely.
Cool how it all came together.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know Sarah directly from our company ULC, Sarah is our director of client success. So she interacts with a lot of information or things related to our clients just feeling supported and successful. That's an ongoing, ever evolving opportunity as we grow. I'll tell you what I remember that I was most excited about. A couple of things when we connected first. One, I was immediately drawn to the fact that you guys were entrepreneurs because when we connected, Nate had been an entrepreneur in another walk of life for a long time. I had never really done anything in the true entrepreneurial world as far as what we were doing then and now. You guys had been practicing infinite banking for way longer than we had at that point. And so I was immediately drawn to I said this to Brian the other day, I was immediately drawn to the fact of like, yes, we decided that we're going to work together and Sarah was going to be a director of client success. But I really feel like we got just a phenomenal duo because Brian is always game planning with Sarah on things we're working on from his expertise and y'all's experiences. And that's just been such a huge blessing for us that we kind of get the package deal of like Brian is indirectly on the team too, which really makes him a part of the team. This is the way I feel.
You get a
Often.
2-for-1.
Yep, that's exactly right.
We do. I mean, when you're excited about different things, he's listening to different podcasts all the time. I think this idea of continuous growth is just so vital to happiness in life. And so he's always listening to something. He's like, oh, this would be really great for ULC. This would be really great. And so, we don't know how to shut it off. So you guys you get a package deal.
I know we've seen throughout our 6 years of running ULC, we've seen client success stories that they can point back to the moment when they decided to learn something new and they sort of see the chain reaction that has taken place from that. Like if you could go back to when you first learned about IBC, did you have any idea it was going to take you to where you are right now?
Question, Nate.
Definitely. Yeah. So I think it was 2011, 2010, 2011. We had a mentor who we had a lot of respect for because of his financial success and we wanted the lifestyle that he had. And so we were at an event, actually, I think we were in Dallas, and he said, there's somebody you got to meet. And we met a gentleman who ultimately helped us get started with infinite banking. So we really got started out of just not fully understanding the concept by any means, but it's just like, if he says it's a good thing, must be a good thing. It was kind of reinforced along the way. We're big believers in finding people who have what you want, do what you do, you can have what they have type of an idea as being like one of the ultimate shortcuts. And so we got started, and then maybe a year or 2 later, I flew out to Nashville to have dinner with another guy that was a really high-speed dude. And I asked him, like, what's the number one thing if you had $100,000, you just had the 100,000, what's the first thing that you would do? And his answer was, I would open up a policy, put all the money in it, borrow against it, and go, do some stuff in real estate and just use the same dollar twice, or be able to recycle the money, is how he put it. So it's been a journey of getting started, that being reinforced. Brandon, you said practicing infinite banking, but I don't know if we were necessarily practicing it. I mean, we did some stuff, but we made a lot of mistakes.
Those two.
So
Yeah, I was fixing to say we made a lot of mistakes too.
Yeah. But the system's forgiving. That's the thing I like about it, is like, could we have maximized, when you say we could have we made a lot of mistakes,
Yeah.
could we have maximized it better? Yes. But the system's been so forgiving that, it's really been a blessing to us during seasons when we wanted to invest in different businesses, or we had, some capital that could go make money somewhere. That was a blessing. And then when we needed capital, we were, when 2020 hit, we had some business stuff and some different things. That capital was there that we had access to. And it was, it's just been such a blessing for us to have that over the last decade.
Yeah, I think when I think about it at the most fundamental level for us, it's just like, it's the first place you put your money. That's the foundation for everything else that you want to do. And I think, for me growing up, I remember being in my driveway when I was 6 years old, asking my dad, like, can we get a pizza tonight? And he looked at me, and I never forget this. And he said, I'm sorry, son, we can't afford it. And that was like a defining moment for me at a young age to say, I'm going to go on this journey or mission to do whatever I can do to figure out how money doesn't have to be an issue for my family. So that was kind of like something that sparked that, desire.
Mm-hmm.
And, I didn't have any like real guidance on what that actually looks like. Everybody's got all these ideas. You can invest in this, you can invest in that. And when it all comes down to it, it's like, before you figure out anything else on that kind of stuff, stocks, crypto, real estate, whatever, it's like, put the foundation in place, which for us is the whole life insurance and infinite banking. So yeah, it's been a journey for sure.
Well, and that, those foundational pieces, when we think about those things, we talk about like the 4 components of economic value that we focus on and promote. Certainty, control, efficiency, and liquidity. Like, those are really, like, when we talk about building the foundation, like, that's really where we want to start. And so if we can allocate more of our resources to create more certainty, create more control, have multiple uses for our money and everything like that, that enables us to really have a lot more fun, because all those things bring back something that's really invaluable to the traditional world, which is peace of mind. And so when you can bring peace of mind back over to your side of the table, then there's a level of freedom that sort of gets unlocked, and not only freedom, but really like creativity, and like, now we can do things a little bit different because we have established our foundation.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the word that I was going to use, is creativity. Allows you to be able to go out there and be more creative, or take other risks or whatever. It's freeing, like you said, in a lot of different ways.
I really like that word creative, because it keeps coming up lately in lots of conversations that I've had the pleasure of having. Nate and I've had, me and other clients. So I've begun to say this, and this is a thought. I'm not saying this is certain. It's just where it's in my brain. If we're created in the image of the creator of the heavens and the earth, is it not logical to think that we're meant to be creative in some way in the gifts he's given us for his kingdom? I have begun to reverse engineer people into that conversation with, if they're constantly trading time for money and they have no time to be creative for his kingdom, what are the next steps that need to happen to get to that point? And no matter how we dice it in America, we either loving on our money so it can love on us for the purposes of his kingdom, or we're going to be a slave to our money. And so you guys have been on this journey almost 14 years as far as the infinite banking and the whole life and those kind of things. So you recently went through our maybe refined, updated process with all the things that we've learned that we brought to our members or new members that we're so excited about, because it's the best way I describe it is a very holistic approach to all the decisions that you're making with your money and your current best thinking, and then just asking questions along the way and you deciding what you want to do about it. From the beginning when you guys started to the most recent process that you went through with us, what have you learned? What stuck out to you about what we just did and what we're doing to where you started? And maybe if you could go back and give yourself advice or, key points, what are some things that would jump out to you that you would share?
It's a lot.
That is, we got time. Go ahead.
The the number one thing I wish I could go back and do differently was open up our policies. Well, how can I put this? Open up our policies with somebody that would actually care about guiding us through the process of what that looks like, not just to get the policy, but like, how do you use it? What are the other things you need to look at? Like from a holistic type of view, like you said. One of the challenges that I've had, because we obviously believe in infinite banking. And so a lot of our friends and our family are like, well, who would you recommend? Or who would you, and so one of our challenges was finding people who actually cared about their clients over the long term instead of just selling them a policy. So what would I do differently if I could have, got started with somebody like you guys from the get-go?
Absolutely.
That would have made a big difference in a lot of different ways.
And the process now, I mean, you guys do such a phenomenal job of getting to know what people want. Like when you sit down, you truly care about what people's goals are. And so you've created a team around you guys that help facilitate those goals, knowing very well that you have a lot of people that want to work with you guys, that you don't want anything to fall through the cracks. So from Barbara, who takes care of, the policy side, she does a phenomenal job. The process for us this last time was so simple and easy. We didn't have to put all this extra thought into it. And then the tools going forward that we need for our family and different things, I'm really excited about Penn and the policy now. So we made a lot of mistakes in the beginning because we didn't understand it. But I think today when somebody gets started, it's completely different. Every tool that they need, if they have a question, there's a resource and there's a tool, and I think it's simplified. I think you guys understand it so well. So I'm excited about it now.
Yeah, well, the thing I like about your process, in addition to that, is like you guys, you just gather info of like what's going on in our life. You told us that this is kind of where you want to be. Let's see where the gaps are, and then you choose on what you want to implement and see what makes sense. So it's not like you need to do X, Y, and Z. It's like you lay out the options based on what somebody wants, and which is different for everybody. So it's a really customizable, unique type of process that allows people to put things in place that are going to help them with their goals. So and you guys have a lot of great people on the team that bring a lot of additional wisdom and knowledge to the table. And so, kudos to you guys for bringing those people in as well.
One of the things that I've heard someone tell us is through the learning process, the learning journey, it helped them identify the things that they wanted that they didn't even realize that they wanted. But then also it helped them get clarity on really the why behind the things that they knew that they wanted. It gave them clarity on why. And I think clarity is just so important because, I mean, this is cliche, but like, if you don't know where you're going, how do you know what direction to go? How do you know you're ever going to get there? Brock uses the quote that if you don't know where you're going, no wind is favorable, or something like that. Having a clear direction, like you mentioned, Brian, this is where we want to go. Now we get to pick the things that we want to bring in that are going to help us get to where we want to go. Are there some things that y'all discovered that you wanted that you didn't even realize you wanted?
I'll let you think about that. I will say this about the process too, Nate, that a lot of times anybody, when you have a family or business or combination of all these different things, it's challenging to stop and take the time to think and figure out what you want, or talk about what it is that you want, or talk about some of the gaps or the challenges. I mean, and so just that piece alone was really valuable, just to talk about it, because we just get so busy on the day to day that it's easy to, for a week, a month, a couple of years to pass and be like, not focus on what's our actual trajectory.
I mean, I would say the exact same thing. The people around you, we didn't know that we really needed to be locked arms and back to back with people that can help us get where we want to go. There's so much noise in the world. If you think about how you guys met on Twitter, but on social media in general, there's so much noise. Go this direction, do this. This is how you're going to get free. This is how you're going to do this. Having people who you're back to back with, that have the connections and the lessons learned. I mean, you guys and us, we have some lessons learned on how to do the internet banking journey a little bit better. So like, don't come to us because we're awesome and we're smart. Come to us because we tripped and fell a whole bunch, and we know where the pitfall is to avoid, and we now know where to go on that. So
Yeah.
just having those relationships with you guys. And then on the outside of that, like, you guys have other connections in taxes. You have other connections that, like, it's like your network is so strong. I never knew that that's what we really needed. We needed a solid network.
Yeah. And to answer your question, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
You did great. I was the one that
Yes.
to answer your question directly, why you gave me time to think. I think one of the things that I struggled with is like, this idea of like future generations. Like, you don't want to spoil your kids and have them turn out to be like that they were given everything, or like you see that happen all the time. You don't want to have like trust fund babies where they don't know how to work for things and things like that. Who are you laughing at? So for me, one of this is putting some of these different things in place to help me think through how can we help set them up for the future, but also involve them in what's happening now. And so I feel a lot more at peace about what their future is going to look like, not just by giving them money, but, equipping them to be able to think through these things and be involved, with us in the process.
You guys are pointing to probably one of my favorite things that we get to do, or I get to do often. And that's really, and I think Scott Donald says this with Value Creation Kid, we don't want to leave an inheritance, we want to leave a heritage. It's one of the coolest things when you're sitting there talking to a husband and a wife and parents who have children, and they're asking you about the process, and we're able to say genuinely, this is just the first step of coaching for the rest of your life, so that you can create the foundation for being as certain as possible when I leave this earth, when the good Lord calls me home, we're going to have things in place to where more of his work can be done by the tool of money, however that's set up. One of the strategic partners we have is Legacy Lock, and Court Pitcher is one of the owners. And what I loved about going through that process, I don't have any desire to be an expert estate planning, but because they are, and they asked Leah and me these awesome questions that I never thought about even needing to be asked. It helped us get more clarity in our one-to-one conversation of what do we really want to be able to say about our heritage, and if the Lord lets us live a long night, how do we match up the steps we're taking daily to match the structure of allowing that to happen? Because they're experts in that field. You guys are correct that we've been blessed to be connected to all these people that are experts and have a heart for really giving and providing value in these other areas. So that's something that we've begun to say a lot. We are experts in whole life, the infinite banking concept, and becoming your own banker. We spend the majority of our working time equipping ourselves to be better and better stewards of that, as you guys do in our conversations. And then we find strategic partners that are experts in the other fields that can give you peace of mind for how and where your money flows. All right, Sarah, you have a heart for really helping people in general. You have really brought to our team this ability to think about how are we going to provide value for the members that are a part of ULC. What is something that really is connected to why you love to do that, and how that all kind of became a part of who you are and led to us getting to do the things that we get to do together that you're always working on?
Well, I would say it's probably from the beginning of our IBC journey. It wasn't that the company wasn't great. Maybe we just weren't really in the right spot to learn it. I'm not sure kind of how that all came together, but the whole idea of if I could go back knowing what I know now, what would I have done? that kind of motivates me to make sure that every single person that comes to ULC as a member with that trust with you guys, I want to, I just want to be there to support them and say, hey, the tools are here, the resources are here. I just don't want you to miss it. If it is the timing for you to to dive in and start using the IBC, becoming your own banker, perfect. Let's match you up with those. I don't know. I have a younger brother and sister. I've always loved taking care of them because I had a single mom, and for me, it's just about making sure people have the tools and the resources so they don't trip up on the same things that I did. And I remember just, Brian kept nudging me and God kept nudging me like, you got to talk to Nate, you got to talk to Brandon. And I didn't think the timing was right. But looking back now, I think the last few years, just spending time with you guys, I feel like our lives are so much better because of ULC. And I want to give that to everybody that comes into the network. It's just been a huge blessing for us.
This is where our relationship, if you tell me that God's not sovereign, I'm going to tell you don't know the God that I know, because you can't make this up. You couldn't go, oh, Brian and Sarah over here in this part of the world are going to connect to Nate and Brandon over in this part of the world, and there's going to be a connection there. I mean, Brian and I got to have about an hour conversation. Well, Brian, Sarah, and I, and then Brian and I, about just life in general and all the things that we're working on, and the things that y'all are working on, and the things that are action steps. And I tell people all the time, when you create a business that provides the value that matches who you are, you will never feel like you're working, or you hardly ever will, because you're literally just having genuine conversations and getting to hear where people are being successful, or how you can provide value to help them overcome an obstacle or things like that. I want to bring up a couple of key points that you've said for all of our listeners or viewers. And I've noticed this in you guys, and which is what really excited me and Nate about partnering with you guys, is that you are vivacious learners. You are very aware that coaching is a good thing, and you are not scared to go out and seek ideas and thought processes from people that are ahead of you, for lack of a better word. And this idea that if we think we've got it all figured out, arrival syndrome is whooping our rear end. And every day when we wake up and hit the floor with our feet, we're in a battle to punch it in the face. And I'm talking about spiritually, physically, emotionally, anything, it's there. And so for somebody just starting out listening to this, maybe it's the first time they've listened and they're like, man, that's intriguing, and they have no other context, what would be a recommendation or two from each of you that you would say from your own journey that you would say, hey, I would prioritize considering doing this first, if they have no previous context of this whole process of becoming your own banker in the infinite banking concept?
What would I do first? My answer is probably different than it would have been back then. I would maybe say in the past, I would say read the book, then have a call with Nate and Brandon. But I'd almost have a call with you guys first now. I don't know if that's jacking up things for you guys.
No, that's perfect.
But, just to get to hear a little about you and your story, and for you guys to get a chance to meet. And yes, go through the course that you guys have, and yes, read the book and get educated and just figure out what your options are. And I think you guys do a good job of helping people figure out, like, what do I actually want, and just talking through that a little bit, because you guys aren't financial planners, which
Thank you.
Which I like.
Me too. Whole nother podcast.
Yeah, right. But you just do a good job listening, figuring out what people want. And infinite banking, and you also let people know, like, it might not be the right time for you to start, because I don't think it is right for everybody in every single circumstance. I don't. So you'll let people know whether it's a good fit or a not good fit, and help educate more than anything of what their opportunities and their options are.
Yeah, I think we got started based on trust, and knowing that people we respect and trust are doing it. I think for me, that's a first good step. Have that conversation with you guys, and that's how our brains work. Though we're more relational, I think. I mean, you love to listen and learn, but hop on the podcast. Listen, you guys have interviewed so many great people. You also have shared so much about it, that if you're the type of person where you need to learn a little bit more before you have the conversation, tune into some podcasts. There's a great course that we can put in the comments that you guys can do. I would get the course, go through it. But I think for us, like that conversation up front and that relationship, if nothing else, you're going to have a great hour conversation with Nate and Brandon. You're going to feel better coming off that call, and maybe there's another relationship they can connect you with. So
And I
Well,
would say,
and the I was just gonna
no,
say
go ahead, Nate.
to Sarah's point. So we've got it set up now where when you purchase the book Becoming Your Own Banker through our website, you automatically get access to the course, which is pretty powerful. So if Brian mentioned, hey, get the book Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash, creator of the concept. Get that book, and we've created this educational course that complements the book. We go through some of the key concepts that are in the book. So now you've got this really beautiful resource where you can read the book, but you don't have to read the book by yourself. Now you've got something you can sort of bounce back off of, an on demand process, and then you can connect with us and we can, take you deep.
Brian, I like that point about connecting with us beforehand. And I would say, especially if you're unsure, this is what the piece of advice I give for anybody that's newer to the social media world is there's going to be a lot of people that tickle your ear and make you think they're the right fit for you. But if you cannot find a way to connect to them or their team and figure out genuinely if that's who you are connected with, who share your purposes, your similar visions, your morals, your ethics, all of that, you still have to do your due diligence to see if it's an ideal fit. And so we get asked this question a lot. They're like, okay, what does this really cost? And this is our answer. If you're willing to spend 20 bucks on the book at any point, that's going to be a valuable tool for you for the rest of your life. Okay. You spend that on 2 cups of Starbucks coffee. So if you're not willing to do that, we're not a good fit. All right. Second thing is, if you're willing to interact with us, the only thing we ask at no cost is to commit to going through our entire process out of respect for our time and your time. And really and truly, that can take as long as you need it to, or it can go as fast as you need to. But there's probably a 2 or 3 or 4 hour commitment in that, which you alluded to earlier, Brian, of like the process we went through and the time that you then chose to prioritize meeting and discussing what you wanted your action steps to be. The thing I think Nate and I get to see so often that's common, and I think we're pushing back against this, is that if you say something's important, but you don't spend any time working on why it's important or how to make it stronger, it's not really important. No matter how we dice it, the tool of money is helping us get to where we want to go and the value we want to create, or it's keeping us from getting there. And so I really love that idea of getting to know who you're working with. And Nate will tell you this all the time. Nate or I will hop on a call with anybody and get to know you, period. There's no downside to that. Even if it never leads to a whole life policy being purchased through and with us, because then you get to know each other. And then who knows what that turns into. If anything, it's still a great conversation, like you alluded to.
Yeah, we've had people that we've connected with that never actually got a policy, got started or whatever, but they recognize the value so much in what we were doing that they recommended people to us. We were like, they didn't even do it, but they just recognized the value in it and were willing to recommend people to us. So, it definitely falls in line with Nelson's number one principle of thinking long term. And in our business, we're simply just planting seeds. Every new connection is an expansion of knowledge. So every new relationship we can build, every new connection we can make, the ultimate goal is to strengthen both parties through that connection, through that relationship. And whether that turns into them doing business with us or not, that's okay. And we recognize that now. It was kind of hard in the beginning when you would have a conversation with somebody and it wouldn't turn into anything. But now that we're 6 years in to our company, we see conversations we had 3 and 4 years ago that are now coming back full circle.
Well, and let's use you guys as an example. We've been working together, so to speak, for many, many, many years, but we've been developing a relationship is really what's been going on. You guys just decided to get your first policy with and through us after going through the process. I remember a few things. I remember Brian saying at one of the conversations, "Oh, I've never thought about it that way, but that makes sense." I love when I get to interact with people and they're humbly aware of there's things I know I don't know, and there's things I don't know I don't know, and then, oh, that's something I've never thought of before. Let me give some thinking to that. Let me and Sarah talk about it, and let's come back to you with some new questions. And is why I think Nate and I have the best job in the world, is because we're just having conversation and we're just going, hey, what are you excited about? What are you working on? And can we get your money to match your purpose? And that's really all that we're talking about, is your money matching your purpose. All right, I'm gonna put you guys on the spot a little bit. Don't panic. You guys have, I tell people all the time, you guys have been doing infinite banking twice as long as Nate and I, which is just such a cool thing. Because normally when you build a company, you normally don't get to bring people on that have more experience related to it than you do. You know what I mean? So we get to draw on that, which is a big part of why you're called the director of client success, because that's your heart, is because of your experiences and y'all's journey in becoming your own banker. Nelson, on page 48 and 49, writes a little 2-page blip about expanding your system to accommodate all income. When you read that years and years ago, maybe it meant one thing to you, or you weren't sure what it meant. Having recently gone through our process and deciding to expand your system, what does that mean to you guys now that you'd like to share?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think initially when we read it, it just seemed really far-fetched. Like, why would you put so much money into policies? Because in the beginning, for us and for those listening, thinking about this, it's like people ask you, you said, Brandon, like, what's the cost? Whether it's the cost of, course book time, actually starting the policy. We looked at premiums as a cost. And so now we look at it completely differently. It's like you're putting money someplace where you can access it, where it can grow with uninterrupted compound interest for the rest of your life. You have the things that Nate talks about, like the liquidity, the certainty, the control, all those kind of different things. And so we look at it differently just from that perspective alone. It's like, put this money into a policy so that you can live off of it. And the more you put in there, really, the more benefits that there are. And yes, you can use it kind of like a bank. So I think that's probably the biggest shift, just the type of thing that comes to mind for me.
The idea of it's a privilege to be able to put that in is, I don't think I understood that at first. It's like, how is that? But they're deposits, and you have a limit that you can do based on, what they say you can put in. So yeah, expanding that also just means more opportunities. Now that the policy's expanded, what more could we do with that? And your mind shifts. I think for most people, we're so committed to driving to our job the same way we drive to our job every day. We drink our coffee the same every day. A lot of the habits and routines we get into, it's almost hard to disrupt your mind a little bit and say, well, what if you could put this amount in? And then what if you could do this with it? And what if it was working here? And it starts to kind of grow your mind. And once it's grown, it can't go back. So it's a privilege to be able to expand our system.
You just alluded to on page 63 in Becoming Your Own Baker, one of my favorite lines. This is an exercise in imagination, reason, logic, and prophecy. And I underlined that the first time I read this book 6 years ago, because it sounded a little bit pie in the sky phooey to me. I'm just being completely honest. I'm like, eh. But as you just alluded to, the longer you practice this, it starts engaging a part of your brain of like, the only limitation is the things I've been doing that I think put a limitation on me, as opposed to how creative can we get with this. And going back to that, creating the image of the creator, being creative is always a good thing if it's for good reasons. It's a very cool thing to hear your guys' story and to really get to be a part of your story and how it's intertwined with ours, and the blessing that's been for Nate and I. So to kind of cap off, you guys tell us what you are working on specifically that you would like to share, if there's anything. I know something you're doing that I'm excited about, that with your newsletter and stuff, but is there anything else that you'd like to talk about, to be sure our listeners know about that?
Yeah, that's definitely one thing that we're excited about is a newsletter we have. It's a newsletter for parents with young kids, and it's called BConnected. Basically, the idea of connecting you with the best ideas to make the most of your time with your kids while they're at home and make sure they're best prepared for the future. So yeah, we do a bi-weekly newsletter on those kind of different things, and that's been fun. And we're just kind of figuring out what's next. But being able to do something together as a family, like that's one of the reasons that we started, is because literally our kids are involved in a lot of these things of reviewing different items and getting their, feedback and opinion and helping them think through some of these things. That's one of the cool things for us, is just doing stuff together as a family, rather than, mommy and daddy have a job or their business and then we have, school or whatever. It's like we get to do stuff together. And that's one of the things we really enjoy.
Yep.
I love it. We will make sure that Be Connected, the link is in our podcast notes for everybody to see that. If you got young kids and you're really wanting to go. I read a book once about we really have 18 summers. Now I've shifted, maybe it's longer than 18 because of, how we interact with them and the heritage we're leaving. But the reality is that they're going to be an adult way longer than they're going to be a kid in our house. So I love that whole thought process and just value inside the family. So Nate, you have anything else before we sign off for the day?
Well, I was just going to say, one thing I really like about the newsletter is like getting an honest review from somebody that I trust. And so like I really appreciate that, because there's things that are out there that like I either don't think about or I've kind of wondered about, and now I'm getting information on something that I've just been curious about. Now I'm getting an honest review, like I said, from somebody that I trust. Really gives me peace of mind about, hey, maybe I do want this thing, or maybe I don't want this thing.
Love that.
Right on. Thank you.
That.
Yeah,
Appreciate you guys.
Yep. Brian and Sarah,
y'all.
it is a privilege to be connected with you guys in your heart for helping and just being a part of ULC. We're very grateful for that. For everybody listening, you can find us at cashflowlegendswithaz.com, and you can get connected to us any way that you'd like to from there. Leave us comments, reviews, anything that you can do that you think would provide value for the value we're bringing to you. We'll be appreciative of that. And we'll see you on the next one.